Okay, 9 o'clock, and here we go. Gangplank reveal is up.
Dead men tell my tale.
555 powder keg, and he's got the same level condition as what's her face. Powder keg stack. All your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Wow. Wow, holy shit. So it can't attack or block, and it's vulnerable so it can get challenged, and it's just passively allowing your spells and skills to deal 1 extra damage. That's kind of cool. So his champ spell is Parlay.
Spread your fire.
Round start, summon a powder keg. There could be some crazy combos with powder kegs.
I am reborn of salt and brine. Got a gift for you.
Powderful explosion.
Blow him to the depths. Off with ye.
Oh man, that's pretty interesting. I like it. There's gonna be some like pretty cool fucking combos you can do with that, huh? Let's take a look at the cards and actually start breaking stuff down. Powder keg is stackable on the board. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Gangplank gets a powder keg when he's summoned. Powder keg stack. All your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. I like the kind of like the concept of this is very, very unique. There's gonna be other cards that this card breaks a lot of rules at once. It's a card that has vulnerable on it and is balanced around that. It's a card that can't attack. It's a card that stacks. And so this is kind of like an artifact almost. If you play Magic, it's kind of like that sort of thing. It's vulnerable, so they can like kill it. So you have to protect it in some way. So this is kind of like opens up a new subclass of card that they're going to be adding this kind of or these kinds of concepts in the future, which is really cool. So basically, it's one-time use. Your next spell or skill just gets empowered, and it applies to skills too. Jagged Butcher. Plunder grant me +1/+1. I'll have to like go through more thoroughly on Gangplank in a bit. +1/+1 if it's Plunder. So it's effectively an upgrade of Cytheria of Cloudfield. You can play it on turn 1 as a 2/2. Obviously, with Warning Shot on turn 1, it could be played on turn 1, but you'd have to be down an entire card to do it. It's almost certainly not worth using with Warning Shot on turn 1, but it's a very funny combo. If you want that kind of thing. Petty Officer. Summon a powder keg or a random 1-cost ally from any faction. Whoa. So it says or. Is that a choice like Twin Disciplines? Or is it 50-50? I assume it's a choice like Twin Disciplines. So you get to choose a powder keg or choose a random thing. A lot of random 1-cost allies. We'll have to like go through those and break them down later. But this card is not that bad. Like, this looks like it'll be pretty playable in like a powder keg synergy deck. Like a 3/3/1. It depends on like the average value of like 1 costs from any faction. Wait, faction? Isn't that supposed to say region? What the hell is faction? Faction is just a reword for Poros, Yetis, Elniks, and Elites. So we have an official name for those now. I could see that. So it's only going to summon from the subset of things that have tags. It's interesting. Which means it's likely to summon a Poro, right? If it's 1 cost from those specific. When I'm summoned, summon a powder keg. Okay, that's it's not bad. Depending on the power level of powder kegs, that could definitely see play. Parlay, deal 1 to anything. If it kills it, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. So it's pretty solid. You can of course just like deal 1 to Nexus if you want. I think this is a pretty decent ability. I think this is a much better version of Warning Shot. It's like crazy how much better this is than Warning Shot. I personally think Warning Shot is very cute. In my opinion, it's likely to be sort of like a meme card. I think a lot of people are going to like the idea of like, you know, 0 mana. It's funny because sometimes it's like you can tap out to 0 and your opponent attacks into your Sejuani and then you Warning Shot at 0, freeze their entire team. That's nice. And don't get me wrong, the fact that this is slow is a downside for sure. But the ability for it to actually affect the board is really important. So I think this is probably going to end up being fine. I think it's important for cards to affect the board. As funny as it is to Warning Shot into like Jagged Butcher, we can kind of already do that in the game, right? Like there's combos like Hapless Aristocrat into Butcher on turn 1, which are pretty much never worth doing for exactly that reason. You just don't want to like commit so much card value. You're committing 2 cards into just like a minor boost on turn 1. It doesn't really make very much sense, right? And by the way, Hapless Aristocrat plus Butcher is a lot better than Warning Shot plus Jagged Butcher. And there's still no reason to do Hapless plus Butcher turn 1. It's not really what you want. Okay, so we have to basically break down this whole Powder Keg package and how this is going to fit in. Because this is most of the reveal here. It's just like Powder Keg synergy. So, he summons a Powder Keg, and all spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. But it disappears after 1 time use. So presumably, you want to combo this with stuff that will deal AoE damage, effectively. Stuff that will deal AoE damage to enhance and really like blow them out. So that would be, for example, something like, let's say Anivia is like kind of like a big AoE. This would be too aggro for Anivia, but I'm just thinking in terms of just the Powder Keg synergy. Static Shock. It could be pretty good with something like Static Shock. Vladimir. So Vladimir's skill is bundled, which means that when it deals 5 damage, it's 5 altogether. So it's not going to deal 10. It'll deal 5 plus 1 for 6. It wouldn't be very good with Vladimir. Interesting. Ember Maiden. Yeah, it could be very, very interesting with Ember Maiden. I wonder exactly how the priority on that would work, because the Ember Maiden's going to be killing the Powder Keg as well. True Shot Barrage. True Shot is interesting, but you probably want to run this in like kind of like an aggro style deck. Basically, it just represents like 1 extra damage in a flexible way. Death Lotus could be interesting, although it's symmetrical. Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm trying to think of the best combo piece for this. You really want this to be to be something that has the ability to damage units. I don't think it's worth using it on something like Boomcure Rookie, because like basically when you use it on Boomcure Rookie, you're playing a 2/2/2 that basically says I deal 1 damage to the face, which is alright, but that's not really worth running. Prankster could... It doesn't work with this, because Prankster's not a spell or a skill, unfortunately. I wonder, like, that would... I wonder if that would even happen all at once, because it might not be exactly the same as Anivia. Withering Wail. Yeah, Withering Wail would be pretty big. Like, allowing your whale to go huge is interesting. So the question is, okay, let's ignore Gangplank for now. If you play Dreadway Deckhand in like just a Shadow Isles deck, just let's say this card, you slap this in Shadow Isles, and then you whale. It's a huge upset. You'd have to play this basically on your defensive turn, and they have the ability to kind of like deny it. It's interesting. I don't know if like Bilgewater would have to provide a lot for you to be in there. Vile Feast for 2. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a very flexible tool. It is very, very flexible. And then there's Gangplank himself, which basically just does a lot of Powder Kegs. Every time he attacks, that's kind of like the Powder Keg payoff. That's probably like the single biggest Powder Keg payoff, really. It seems like hard to reliably combine with a lot of other strategies, but like when you combine it with Gangplank's leveled up form, like if you have, you know, 2 Powder Kegs, this attack will basically kill... It'll deal 3 damage to everything. It turns Gangplank into Anivia, basically. Yeah, it turns Gangplank into Anivia. And that's basically it. Where I see this working best is probably a tempo like Bilgewater PNZ deck, where you know, your Powder Kegs like Dreadway Deckhand and Petty Officer are going to allow your removal to extend for more reach. It gets a lot more flexible there. And then your spells are also protecting, you know, your Powder Kegs. They're making sure they're not just getting killed off for free. Although even then you're slowing down the game when that happens. So it's like, you know, when you combo with Static Shock, that feels pretty good. When you combo with like Mystic Shot, that's alright. It's not amazing, but getting that extra like +1 on removal can actually be worth the flexibility of these cards. And if they do move in to kill the Powder Kegs, then you're getting pretty good stall value, because you're getting kind of like a free double body, right? That's gonna be pretty good. So there's gonna be a lot of combos with P and Z. And then of course you know, you've just got kind of like your Gangplank over the top. P&Z tools like Boom Kuruki, Static Shock, and Mystic Shot are going to help you level up your Gangplank. That's probably going to be, overall, I would see kind of like the best way to use this like Powder Keg Gangplank synergy. But you can run him, you know, you can run him in like Noxus, maybe. You can run him with Swain. I think that Gangplank is a card that wants to play pretty aggressively. He wants to come out as like almost like a pseudo finisher, pretty much. And a lot of his like support cards are going to be very early. Stuff like Petty Officer, stuff like Dreadway Deckhand, most of the Bilgewater cards we've seen, as well as like a lot of the Plunder cards do want to play for like a good bit of tempo. So the idea of combining him with Swain, he's pretty cool. I don't know how much you would want Swain to be ran at best in a deck like that. I think you'd probably... You're more reliably going to get more value by going into P&Z, I think, than Noxus, especially because Noxus doesn't have as much ways of damaging the board. It's really funny with Death Lotus, though. It's like, you could do a Gangplank, Swain, Death Lotus deck. I think that would be... I would have a hard time being reliable enough, would be my guess. However, it could be. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like... A literal single Powder Keg turns Death Lotus into an actual stall card. Death Lotus does really well with Swain. You know, Swain and Gangplank work well together. So you could build kind of like a slow play version of the deck that kind of wants to stall out with Powder Keg plus Death Lotus, or, you know, Powder Keg plus Blade's Edge. And then once your champions are flipped, you start playing them and like closing out a little bit later. I think that could be the second way to run this. So is there some weird way to use Powder Kegs? Like, finally, is there some weird way to abuse this body? Like, for example, if you have something that like silences it, it's not worth using an entire card to silence it. Like, how else can we interact with this just outside of using its ability? Like, if we want to use it, you can't use it as like a blocker. There's nothing that does like an AoE silence. Fill the enemy deck with them. I mean, in theory, that would be possible. Stuff like Ancient Crocolith. Yeah, sacrifice, that exactly. Like, sacrifice targets like Ancient Crocolith, I could kind of see. Crowd favorite. Yeah, probably not worth using with crowd favorite. But, yeah, that is possible. That is possible. Free Glimpse. I think that there's not really enough of a reason for sacrifices here. Like, at the end of the day, if you're not using Powder Keg for their effects... then Dreadway Deckhand just becomes like a really bad House Spider. Petty Officer is kind of not worth running as well. So it is cute to think of the idea of using Powder Kegs as like kind of sacrifice targets, like old school Scapegoat kind of stuff. That would be cool. I don't think there's enough of a payoff for that in the game yet. Iceborne Legacy. I mean, that's really funny, but they can't attack or block. Yeah. So I don't think there's really too much of a way yet to use this as a body. Overgrown Snapvine, that's cute, but again, you're just better off playing like anything that summons two bodies. There are cheaper ways to get double body or triple body effects than this. So right now in the current game, there's probably no way to abuse the fact that these come out as interactable bodies. Callista and Thresh level ups. Yeah, if the opponent kills them or you sacrifice them, they can help boost those levels up. It's definitely there's some feasibility there. It feels like there would have to be some cards we're not seeing for that to really be something I would consider, for sure. But, yeah, it's a possibility in the future. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think that's kind of it. That's my overall kind of, like, basic impressions, at least. Basic first impressions of these. Obviously, we're going to spend the next hour talking about, like, all the different ways to use these. Something like, how good Powder Kegs really are. Because that's a little harder to say. So that's not bad. Chempunk Shredder. Oh, Jesus. Oh, man. Oh, dude. Are we Shredder boys? Yo, I think we might have to be. This card almost single-handedly becomes an actual card. That's a little crazy. This card wasn't that far from playable before. And like with one powder keg, this is like a really, really nutty stabilizer potential. Holy shit. So yeah, Chempunk Shredder unironically looks good with this. Like actually.
1/8 gay.
Because I think you already want to be in P&Z. It kind of hits a good timing. Turn 5 is a very, very good timing for this kind of thing. You'll probably have 1 or 2 You'll probably have like 1 or 2 kegs, or at least the option of having those if you wanted to have set it up prematurely. You'll have like 1 or 2 kegs as options. Usually this is kind of when their board is like well developed. And he did recently get +1 attack to 5, so he's not really terrible. This is actually something that makes him competitively considerable for sure. Rookie and Saboteur.